So today we have a couple questions I'm going to answer. I always ask parents what their biggest parenting question is, and especially when we're dealing with mixed needs families, we have a lot of questions and can use a lot of support. I hope that these answers will help you. I am not a professional counselor. I'm just a mixed needs mama. I have education. I've educated myself as much as I can, and I'm sure you have as well. I've been a teacher for over 30 years, so I've dealt with a lot of different neurodivergent situations. And as you know, I've raised 4 kids. They're all adults now and still alive and still doing okay. 3 of them are autistic, and 1 is neurotypical. So I have a little bit of experience. So I'm sharing with you from experience what I've learned as a mom, as an educator, and I hope it helps you and I hope it blesses you. But always, you can feel free to put your comments and questions below the show notes. There's a place for those questions, so feel free to do that. So today I have 2 questions I want to work on and answer for you. And I will try to do some of these episodes where we will answer more questions along the way. But these tend to be too long to do more than just a couple questions at a time, because I do try to answer as thoroughly as possible without spending an hour on here. So the first question I want to answer is about self-regulation. I do want to put a little commercial in here. You guys have heard me talk about it, our 7-day challenge. I have 5 7-day challenges, by the way, that I wish I had them when I was first a mom. I think they would have been so beneficial. The first one is about regulating ourselves. A couple of the questions I have is how to self-regulate completely when I'm overstimulated and how to not lose it when I feel overwhelmed. As parents, sometimes we are also neurodivergent. And even if we're not, we are carrying a lot in dealing with mixed needs kids and trying to meet all the needs, answer all the questions, do all the things. And if we're homeschooling, that just adds another element to our basket of things to deal with. So it's not that we want to shy away from this, but we do want to do it well. And we need to learn to self-regulate, to govern our own emotions and be able to set an example for our kids, but also not lose it with our kids. So, how can we do that? One of the main things that I have done is, and you're going to think this is a silly Sunday school answer, but believe me, it's not. It's my lifeline. It's what I had to do, and that was to pray. As many of you know, when I was first homeschooling, raising my kids, we were on the mission field. It's not that I had an aunt or a grandma that I could drop the kids off to and take a break. I had none of that. I had to handle our situations day by day, all the time. Most of the time, my kids were not in school, they were homeschooled. And I had the wrong diagnoses for my 2 older kids for the longest time, as you may know if you've listened to the podcast. So, what I did know as an educator, I was applying to my kids and I was doing absolutely the wrong things, because when they were diagnosed correctly, then I realized I needed to do kind of the opposite of what I had been doing. So, if you're dealing with ADHD with your kids and you are losing it because they are just hyper, out of control, noisy, can't sit still, can't settle down, we've got to control our own emotions first. Then we can help them with theirs. So it's like you're flying on the airplane and you put your mask on first, then you can help your child with theirs if the oxygen drops down. So we do need to do that. And we have to pray. We have to give a soft answer. I don't know about you, but for me, that helps. If I know I'm going to give a soft answer that makes me calm down. If I'm going to just go with the flow with what I'm feeling, then I wind up saying things I shouldn't say, and I wind up being much louder and harsher than I needed to be. Now, I am not saying that I never do that. I have made my fair share of mistakes. And what I would say, if you have lost it with your kids, first thing you need to do is apologize. You don't want them responding that way, so we shouldn't allow ourselves to respond that way. Okay, so If you get into the habit of losing it and screaming and yelling and saying whatever comes to your mind, you have got to ask God to help you break that habit. And one of the best ways is to determine that you are going to give a soft answer. There's something about that. When you say you're going to give a soft answer, the first thing you do is you breathe, you take a deep breath, and you calm down before you answer, because you just have to. You count to 10. You know the old thing about counting to 10 before you lose your temper? What we're doing when we lose it is we're losing self control. We're losing our temper. We're letting it fly, whatever feeling we have. So, to regulate that feeling, we've got to take a beat. We've got to stop. We've got to breathe and calm down. Then we can answer the situation. We can deal with the situation at least better than if we just ran in charging with all the emotion. So that's the first thing, is to breathe. And they say the best way to do that, from what I've heard from other counselors and those who are trained in counseling, is a 4 in and 4 out, and hold it for 4 in between. I have a hard time with that sometimes, because when you're just, it's hard to hold it for the 4. I can breathe in for 4 and I can breathe out for 4, but holding it for the 4 is the hardest part when you're amped. But try it. So you're going to breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 if you can, and then let it out for 4 counts. If you can't hold it for more than a 1 or a 2, that's okay. That deep breath still gives you that moment to regroup, to stop. If we have the rule for ourselves that we are not going to respond with that first emotion, that shock, that anger, that frustration, that overwhelm, then that helps. That doesn't mean we're not going to fail sometimes, but it helps. So we want to lay the groundwork for ourselves by putting that decision in place. If we make that decision, we're going to be less likely to break it, because we've determined this is what we're going to do. As a teacher, I have to share a story. When I was teaching, I always had the noisy classroom. I was the creative teacher. I loved having noise. We talked, we had group activities. They would be working in small groups. So it was just noise, noise, noise. And I was okay with that. It did not bother me. The chaos was part of learning as far as I was concerned, and I enjoyed it. My students seemed to enjoy it, and we did okay. But I had another teacher friend who, when I had my hour to work on lesson plans at my desk, she had my classroom, and my office was in my classroom. So she would have her class, and I mean, she dimmed the lights, she whispered only, and you could hear a pin drop in that room. The students only addressed her with whispers. The whole class was so quiet. And I'm like, oh my goodness, how does she do that? That's just so not me. But it was amazing to watch. What you notice in both of those classrooms, in both of those situations, is the children reflect what they experience. They reflect our attitude and what we see. So if our children are being belligerent and losing their temper and are out of control, they may be watching us do the same thing. So we've got to learn to self-regulate. I really do encourage you to check out the 7-day challenge. I'll have the link in the show notes. The cool thing about these challenges, like I said, there's 5 of them. There's 7 days each, but they're only 7 minutes a day. I know we don't have time to sit down and watch an hour-long class. I made them specifically 7 minutes a day, a little tool you can implement that day. And the best one, the first one, is breathing. If we breathe, give ourselves a second, even 1 second can make all the difference in the world. So we take that deep breath. It helps us to be able to think. What they say biologically is happening is when we're getting amped up, when we're about to lose it, when we're getting overwhelmed, our brain shuts down. We are just working from the part of our brain that is the frontal part, that is just the emotion, and we lose the higher functioning of our brain. That's what the biologists say. It's like that fight or flight mode, that whole thing. I'm not convinced all of it is exactly right, because I think a lot of it is based on an assumption of evolution and we're just animals. I think God calls us to a higher calling and has created us above the animals. But there is a little bit that we can learn from that. And that is that if our brain is shutting down, if we are so overwhelmed that our emotions are in control and our brain is shutting down, we have to take a minute and relax. We have to take a minute and breathe. We hold our breath. We clench our fists. We tighten our shoulders when we're stressed out, when we're feeling overwhelmed. The other thing is we have to control our thoughts. The Bible tells us, take every thought captive unto the authority, the leadership of God's word. We have to do that. And learning to do that is not easy, but with practice, we can do that. What happens is we start to spiral. So let's say you're a homeschool mom and you're homeschooling your kids and they're picking on each other. They're just like kicking each other under the table. They're doing things that you're just like, why are they being this way? Your ADHD kid is like antsy that day, and he just wants to run around constantly. You can't keep him in his seat. Every time you turn to answer a question for your other child, he's out of his seat again, running around doing something he shouldn't be doing. Maybe one of your kids has spilt their cup all over the papers that you're working on for homeschool. It's just a day where it's like one thing after another and it's building. What we're doing mentally at that point is we are building this stack of complaints, of stressors. Instead of dealing with each one as it happens, we're letting it build because we're trying to be the good mom. We're trying to be calm and collected and cool and not losing it. Instead of dealing with what we need to deal with and trying to address the situation as it happens, we're building it up until we have a whole pyramid of complaints and negative thoughts. And they can spiral, and we can spiral into anger, depression, wanting to just give up and forget it all. We can all get there. You're no different than anyone else, let me tell you. We all do this. We all get there. So we have to take the first thought captive. Okay, so little Joey is our hyper child, and he is just like everywhere. Let's say we have 3 kids. We tell our other 2 kids, I'm going to go deal with Joey. He's a little hyper today, as you can see, and he needs some help. So I'm going to take a moment and deal with him. Can I trust you to work on your math or to read your book? That might be a good thing. We're going to have silent reading time while I go talk to him, and then we'll come back to our lesson. So get your book. So each child has a book that they read. They have a reading spot, whether it's their bed or a pillow in the corner or whatever. Tell them to go to their reading nook spot and take a break while you go deal with the hyperactive child. Now, when you go deal with the hyperactive child, you're going to address what's actually going on. If they have so much energy, they need to be able to move, then let's go outside. Let's get the basketball. Let's dribble it back and forth and pass it back and forth. And let's do some energy activity that can get that energy out. But let them know we're going to do this for 15 minutes and then we're going to sit still and do our work for 15 minutes. Is that okay? Can you do that? Would you help me with that? I can tell you most of our kids, if they feel like they're doing something for us and helping us out, they really want to do that. If we have a good relationship with our kids and we talk with them and they know we're a safe place and that we love them, we're not going to have a child that's like, no, absolutely not. I'm not going to do that. What's wrong with you? I mean, especially if they're a little kid, that's just not the way they're going to respond. If they're responding that way, we've either got a child with ODD or we've got a child that doesn't understand the expectations and what we will tolerate and not tolerate, or we're tolerating things we shouldn't tolerate. So the problem is most likely our discipline, that we are not being clear with our expectations and consequences. We need to establish that very clearly from the get-go with our children and repeat it often, that these are the things that we do in our home. We do not allow these things, and this is the consequence if you do this. If the expectations are clear and the consequences are clear, then they make a choice and then they suffer whatever the consequence is. That doesn't mean we're, beating our children or anything like that. A consequence can be anything. It could be taking away some of their TV time or their computer time, or even their time to hang out with friends or with their siblings. They have to sit by themselves or whatever. You know your child and you know what's going to be effective for them. So you want to use that, but to be clear on the expectations. Then we're dealing with that situation. We're helping that child self regulate, and we have kept our emotions in check as well. Then we come back to the table and we have our kids who've been reading silently. Praise them every chance you get. Praise your child for when they have made a good choice and they have done something well. Use those opportunities to just affirm them and to help them know how much you appreciate them. And then bring them back to the table for the next part of the lesson. Then, as something else pops up, we're going to stop and address it. We're not going to ignore it. The overwhelm comes when it's one thing piled on top of another. If you start your day feeling overwhelmed, you're exhausted getting out of bed and you feel overwhelmed and you're dreading starting homeschooling or starting breakfast because you know it's going to be this or it's going to be that. We haven't dealt with the day before. We're still carrying the overwhelm from the day before because we let things pile up. I know it's hard. It just is. It's going to be difficult. We've got to be diligent to stay on top of each situation, deal with that situation, bring reconciliation where necessary, bring in forgiveness where necessary, and teach. We still need to teach. Now, we don't want to be lecturing a child in the middle of a situation that's traumatic or that they feel bad for. We want to teach in the teachable moments when we need to teach. And we definitely want to grab those situations where we know our child is teachable and wants to understand. What I've found is helpful is after a situation has de-escalated, everybody's regulated and ready to get back to work or whatever, take just a moment, not an hour, not 45 minutes, just take a couple minutes and just talk about what happened. You were kicking your sister under the table, and that isn't kind, that isn't respectful, and we just don't do that. So what happened when you kicked her? Well, she yelled at me and she hit me. What did you think was going to happen when you kicked your sister under the table? Make them think through what they're doing, because this is something I found with kids. They do not think about the consequences. They act, they react, they don't think about what happened in between. Talk to your daughter then. Okay, let's say your daughter did hit your son when he kicked her under the table. Why did you hit him? Well, he kicked me. Did he kick you on purpose? I don't know. I just assumed he did. So you can talk about that. I know he kicked me on purpose because he laughed about it after he kicked me. Okay. Did hitting him help the situation or hurt it? Well, it hurt it. Then what could we have done differently? Have them role play the whole thing. Now, this is not directly addressing your own overwhelm, but it is. Because if we can deal with each situation and we can remain calm and talk to whatever the issue is, speak to that and deal with that, we're not going to get that piled up overwhelm. So that's what I'm trying to show, that the best way I know is, number one, we have our expectation for ourselves. We're not going to respond with anger and shouting. We're going to respond with a calm answer. We're going to first take a deep breath and pray, and then we're going to respond. So I have what I call CPR. If we met at a live event, you may have seen these cards that I have at my booth that have CPR on them, and there's one for older children, younger children, and for the parents. These are regulation cards. If you did not pick those up, just send me an email and say, I really want the regulation cards, and I will mail them to you. I'd be happy to. Those are cards you can just keep in your purse or keep in your phone or whatever, to just pull out and to remember how to respond in those situations. And it's meant to help us stop a minute, read that card. Just the process of doing that gives us that second to not respond, but to look at the card and remind ourselves about CPR. And CPR keeps our relationships alive. Okay, so here is what CPR stands for in this situation, of course. The C is to check your pulse. Check for where you are. You feel yourself amping up. You're feeling overwhelmed. check where your emotions are. It just takes a second to go, okay, wait a minute. I'm starting to get angry. I'm starting to get upset. Let me stop a second. Check your pulse. The second one is to acknowledge what's causing your pulse to start racing, to start amping you up. So you're assessing the situation, is what it really boils down to. Then P, I know you know what that one is. Pray. Pray for wisdom, pray for self control, pray for the Holy Spirit to take the wheel and take over. We need to pray. Then R is to not regulate. You probably think it's regulate. It's not regulate, it's respond. How are we going to appropriately respond to this situation? If our child kicked our other child under the table, we do need to respond with some discipline, with reminding them who they are and what the rules are and what our expectations are. But if it's little Joey over here who's just hyperactive because he's got ADHD and he can't help it, he's amped, then our response is to take him out. Let's get some energy out. But promise me, if we do this for 15 minutes, you're going to give me 15 minutes. And he's going to do that. If it's an autistic child, that doesn't work quite as well. For one thing, they're not as hyper usually, although we do have the autism ADHD combo, which is always interesting. I have at least one of those. Anyway, if we're dealing with a shutdown or a meltdown with an autistic child, you can't reason with them at that moment. So you're going to have to mostly be dealing with your own response to them and how best to help them come back from this overwhelm. So, like with my nephew who was overstimulated by noises and activity, he would go to his room and sit in the dark for a few minutes. And we would know when he was fine, in a few minutes, he would be back just happy as could be and could be involved with everyone again. But he needed that moment. So instead of yelling and getting angry and adding to the situation, I understand that my child needs to go sit in his regulation station spot, his place, his safe place. So we let them do that because that's what they need. Then our expectation, and he knows this, is when he's regulated, when he's calmed down, that he needs to come back. We're going to finish homeschooling. It's not that he can just leave and never come back. So we are clear with those expectations, and then we respond appropriately to each situation. That helps us not to amp up and be overwhelmed because we're not piling things on top of each other. We're dealing with each thing as it comes along. I hope that helps you. And again, if you want to know more, check out the 7-day challenge, and you can also request the CPR cards. I would love to send those to you. So this question is similar, but it's still a side question. How do we help our children or encourage our children to share their emotions without being out of control and causing us to be overwhelmed by too much? Okay. This is so important. When I was a child, I was raised by the generation where children were seen and not heard. We were never allowed to be angry at our parent. We would be angry, but we could not express that anger in any way, shape, or form unless we wanted to be, in my case, slapped. And I had my fair shares of slaps. We in this generation do not usually want to raise our children that way. I did not raise my children that way to the best of my ability. So I wanted them to be able to share with me when they were frustrated, angry, or scared or upset in any way, that they could express those emotions. And we're not afraid of emotions. Emotions are not sins. Emotions are just our feelings. Now, they can lead to sin, and we do have to teach the difference there. The Bible says, be angry, but do not sin. Well, what does that mean? So we talk about, when I'm angry, what do I want to do? Do I do that? Am I allowed to do that just because I'm angry? No. We have to do that for ourselves as well. Do I get to scream at my kids just because I'm angry? No. Do I get to yank their arm and pull them out? No. We've got to model what we want our children to emulate. If they are out of control, usually it's because we're not in control of our own emotions. Now, how do we encourage them? The first and foremost thing is teach respect. Love and respect are the two main pillars of our home. Love and respect. If we do not have those, then everything else can't be built. Everything else is going to fall apart. So we've got to teach our children that we respect them and they need to respect us. God can handle our anger. You look at the Psalms. David shared his anger, his grief, everything, his dismay, his fear, all that he was experiencing. He shared those emotions in his Psalms or songs to God. God never zapped him. God never reprimanded him inappropriately. God is not that kind of God that's like, you can't be angry at me, I will thump you on the head. That isn't our God. He's not afraid of our anger. He made us as emotional creatures. However, I believe that we need to always approach God's throne with respect. We do not just storm in and blast him and scream at him and show disrespect for who he is. In the same way, our children can express that they are upset or angry or frustrated or fearful, hesitant, whatever they're experiencing, without being disrespectful. So we have to teach them how to do that. We have to model it for them. We have to practice, okay? Here's how we do this. So I can tell you didn't like what we're going to be doing this afternoon, and you're kind of upset about that. You seem to be a little angry. Can you tell me why you're angry without making your voice get louder, but keep your voice calm, and tell me what's making you upset? Teach them how to do that. And then if they get to talking and they start getting amped up and they're starting to get emotional, and like, okay, I'm going to stop you just a second. You're starting to get amped up. Let's get back down. Take a deep breath. Now, try again. Can you continue telling me what's going on? The wonderful, wonderful thing about that is, instead of getting this belligerent yelling and emotional out of controlness, they calm down to where they can really tell us what's at the root of the anger, what's really going on. Maybe they're not even angry with us. They're angry at something that happened in the store when we were at the store earlier, or they're angry at what their friend said. We help open up those conversations, finding the truth and being able to tackle the problem instead of tackling each other, tackle the problem when we can help them calm down and talk to us with respect and love and calmness. They can then express their feelings. We have worked with our kids their whole lives to be able to express their feelings. And I think it's been pretty amazing for the most part. One of our children in particular deals with a temper a little more than the others. So that's been a little more challenging. But we're getting there. And I'm sure God is still working and will continue to work. That helps us then to not get overwhelmed. We're modeling for them how to express our emotions without being emotional. And that may seem silly, that may be counterintuitive, but if we can help them express what they're feeling, number one, then they get to put words to it. They learn how to tell us what they're feeling. They have the words they need. Get those books. There's a whole series of books on Amazon about emotions. There's one in particular, I'll put the link in the show notes, that is really good for talking through emotions and learning how to deal with them and not being afraid of them, but knowing how to unemotionally express what we're feeling. And for our kids to do that, they've got to have the vocabulary to do that. So we have to help them have that vocabulary. And we have to model for them how to express our emotions without being too emotional. Sometimes that can't help. They're crying, they're upset, their feelings have been hurt, they're grieving something, and emotions are going to spill over, and that's normal. But there's not disrespect in that. There's not anger and out of control behavior in that. Grief can overwhelm us and we can break down without attacking another person because it's a different situation. So we want them to be able to express those emotions. Emotions keep us healthy. They help us know what's going on, and they help us to navigate life and relationships. We need to be self-aware. We need to know what we're experiencing and what we're feeling. So we do want to help our kids in that area, but we can't let ourselves get overwhelmed with it. And we get overwhelmed when those emotions are out of control, when we are acting on our emotions instead of just feeling them and expressing them. We've got to also help our kids not to be afraid to feel something. They may not want to feel it, they don't like it, it feels awful. This is especially true with grief. We don't want to feel that pain. We want to medicate it away. We want to avoid it. We want to go have fun, but we're grieving something. We have to help our children embrace that and learn to walk through it to the best of our ability. And that's not going to be easy, but we can do it as long as we don't become overwhelmed and we talk to them gently and walk them through it. Again, those cards I created will help in that situation. And if you take our 7-day challenges, I think those will help as well. It's a whole different way of thinking than what our natural reaction is. Our natural reaction is, you made me angry and I'm going to let you have it. The truth is, no, I feel angry and I need to know how to deal with this. I need to know what to do with my anger because right now I want to punch you. We've got to help our children walk through that. The talk and listen session, which I've shared before, and I share it in the 7-day challenges, people think it's silly because it is. It's awkward. It's not the way we're taught to talk and to deal with things. But I promise you, especially if you're dealing with neurodivergent children, this is a gift that you give them. It is an amazing tool to use in your relationships that then becomes just a natural part of your relationships where you can talk about your feelings and not amp up and respond in emotional ways. So I hope this helps. I hope that you can check out these resources and that they will really bless you and help you as you're trying to navigate your own self-regulation and being able to model that for your children and being able to teach them how to regulate themselves. Even our most autistic, emotional children can learn some self-regulation as long as we have those expectations and those options for regulation available to them. If you have any other further questions, please feel free to put those in the comments. Down below, the show notes is a place to put in your comments and your questions, and we'd love to hear from you. We're so excited you spent time with us today. Thank you for being here, and I'm excited to see what God is going to do in our families this week.